So, in today's Old Testament passage, we have book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 5, verses 10 through 20. And since we are not very often talk about the book as a whole, we have only 2 or 3 readings within 3-year cycle, then sometimes pop up from the book. I'll talk a little bit about the book, and then we'll definitely talk about the passage. So, first of all, the name. Who knows what, without looking into the commentaries, who knows what Ecclesiastes means? So, okay, sometimes in other translations it also says Ecclesiastes or the preacher. And this is not an ideal translation. So, Ecclesiastes, we gathered from the Greek translation of Old Testament, which was done before Christ, and that's how they translated it. Because ecclesia as a gathering, that's the word that we have our word church. That's where it comes from. Okay? Now, the real name is, in Hebrew, it sounds like this. It's Koheleth. And this means a person who gathers people together. So it's not necessarily in the church sense, not necessarily it's more of a community term. So the one who brings them together, and of course, as a second step, he tells them something. In modern scholarship, there are people who think that this book is not by Solomon. Have you ever heard about that? Okay? So it is written way, way down later, probably 4th century, 5th century before Christ, or maybe even 3rd or 2nd century before Christ. The reason people believe that is there are a couple Aramaic terms from Aramaic language, not from Hebrew language here. And also, the book is so deep and wise. So it's no way people of Israel could come up with something like that before Plato and Aristotle, before Greek philosophers. Okay, for me it's relatively simple and clear. The word of a preacher or Ecclesiastes, Koheleth, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Yes, you can take the term son in the Bible. Sometimes it does mean not necessarily the first or son within the immediate family. It can be something of a grandson, still using the term son, or it can even mean, and especially in prophetic parts of the Bible, word son can mean member of a school, like a seminary. Habakkuk says, I was not a prophet, nor of a son of a prophet, but God took me from the fields and turned me. So he was not educated as a preacher, as a prophet. Okay? But 2 things about this. Thing number 1. In that's a Russian term. See, in Russian Bible, there is no 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, then 1 Kings, 2 Kings. It's 1 Kingdoms, 2 Kingdoms, 3rd Kingdoms, and 4th Kingdoms. So, in 1 Kings, chapter 3, let's go there for a second. What kind of promise from God we have, or actually Solomon has, and then we, therefore, have this record of this promise. In 1 Kings, in chapter 3, you know the story. You know, Solomon, after some of his activities, he realized that there is something not clicking. I need to have more and more wisdom from God. So he goes to the place where Lord's place still is, where his glory dwells, and he prays, and in the night, God appears. And what he tells them is, because you asked for wisdom and not for wealth or health, therefore lives of your enemies. Okay? I will give you I will give you wisdom and all of that. But also, what he tells them is, give me a second. I lost it. Here we go. Verse 12. Behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind. Actually, the real translation is, I will give you a heart to understand good and evil. Did we ever hear it before? Mm-hmm. Yes, we did. In the garden, back there in creation. But that's a different story. We're not going to talk about this. Just, you can make a mental note and come back to this idea. But I will give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. Okay, now when we go back with this in mind into Ecclesiastes, Son of God, the word of the preacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. And this philosophy that we find in the book of Ecclesiastes is so deep. Should we be surprised? Probably not. Because God gave them the wisdom that no one else had, and no one after him will have, and the only one we have who exceeded his wisdom is who? Christ. Is Jesus. He tells the people, you've heard about Solomon. He's a great wise man, but here is the one who is bigger than Solomon. Okay? So we need to see those kind of things and bring them together. So this is one of the simple things. Concerning the Aramaic words. Okay? Aramaic language is a relative language to Hebrew language, biblical Hebrew. Okay, let's put it this way. And it was, in scholarly terms, what is called lingua franca. So the language for the territory, basically for the whole Near East. Even in the time of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Exodus with Moses and David, so all the judges and David and Solomon, it was main language. To say on the basis of usage of two words from Aramaic language in Ecclesiastes that the date should be late is to say one simple thing. The same logic should be applicable to our modern day and age. Who knows what's the code of honor, what's the main emblem of United Kingdom looks like? Okay? If you will Google that, I'm not going to describe it, it will be fun. There is also a stripe going through with few words, kind of like the motto of United Kingdom. Okay, what's the main language in United Kingdom?
English.
English. They think it's English. We know it's not English, but they think it's English. Okay, whatever. It's probably British, okay? Let's put it this way. But, having fun. What's the language on that stripe over their coat of armor? It's French. So does that mean that the British Empire that basically covered the whole earth and the sun was never going down over British Empire began to exist in reality only, like let's say, in a couple of centuries before? No. They used it because the French language was somewhat, that's why we call it lingua franca. Okay? Because the French language was used all over Europe for main communication. And Latin was used for scholarly work. So that doesn't work. So in reality, it is Solomon. So we have only two options. It is Solomon or it is really Solomon. Okay? No other options. Now, two things. How to read book of Ecclesiastes. Because sometimes people are confused and they believe that it is so deep. Yes. But it's also so gloomy. Because you read, and this is vanity. And it is vanity after vanity. And everything falls apart. And it doesn't make any sense. And it's problem after problem. And I observed everything and tried everything. And of course we know Solomon, and we know his story with his 100 women, 700 of who were wives and 300 concubines, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. It's not the point. But, he tried everything, and he lived his bad, poor, sinful life. And then he finally came to conclusion, it does not make any sense. Yes, okay? So it is depressing, and guys like Sartre and Camus, two great French philosophers, came up with the teaching of existentialism, and that's basically where it goes. Life has no meaning. You can try to cling to your existence right now, but it doesn't have any meaning whatsoever too. Okay, that's one way to read the book. In reality, if you pay attention to very important details, this is not what book teaches. From place to place, we have what I would call a theme of joy. And it is important to notice that. For example, in 2:24, what do we have there? In 2:24, there is nothing better for a person than he should eat and drink and find what? Enjoyment, says ESV. What NIV says? 2:24.
Be merry. I don't know.
Be merry. Okay, good. Yeah, good. That's find enjoyment. Be merry. Yeah, it is great. Okay, and this also I saw is from the hand of the Lord. So it's not a mere philosophical observation of life. What he says, it is from God to eat, drink, and be merry, or be joyful. Find enjoyment. And this is not the only place. Now let's go into chapter 3, verse 13. Also, let's start with 12. I perceive that there is nothing better for them to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure, and basically it's the same word, and be merry in this toil. This is God's gift to man. It is a God's gift to man to enjoy your life. Okay? Now, 3:22. I saw that there is nothing better than a man should rejoice in his works, for this is his lot. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? So while we live, we turn back and see the results of our work and results of our life, results of our family development, how kids grew up, how successful we are because we raised them faithfully. And this gives us joy. And this is not by no means any sinful joy. It is from God. Now, we also have a passage that we will be at the very end of chapter 5. We'll skip it for now. Now we'll go in chapter 8. 8:15. And I commanded joy, for man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful, for this will go with him to his soils through the day of his life that God has given him under the sun. And now chapter 9, 7 and 9. Go, eat your bread with joy, drink your wine with merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. Okay? Verse 9. Enjoy life with wife whom you love, all the days of your vein. Okay, we'll talk to this in a second. Like that has given you under the sun, because this is your portion in life and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. And then at the very end in chapter 11, we have verses 8, 9, and 10. 11:8. So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and sight your eyes. But know that all these things God will bring you into judgment. And the 10th, remove vexation from your heart, but put away put away pain from your body, for your youth draws and life and vanity. So there is a joy. And it is important to keep track of that, to keep notice that. Now, with the term that we find in the very beginning, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Okay? If you remember this wonderful book, Pilgrim's Progress, okay? He comes to Vanity Fair, okay? And people try to present their good, their achievements, their good things that they created, and it doesn't make any sense. Okay? Now even there is a magazine, Vanity Fair, for celebrities. Probably that's what it is. I don't know. I've never lived the life of a celebrity so far. When Zion will become the center of the universe, we will know how it looks like, but we'll see. But for now, seriously, it is fun that interpreters, they have to deal with the text. What the text says is actually sounds like this. So you will be able to read it. I'm not going to write in Hebrew. By the way, we need to start a Hebrew class so you guys can read the text by yourself.
Sure.
Okay. Abelim. Okay? Does that remind you anything? Sounds anything familiar? Somebody's name? Abel. Okay? So this word is actually kind of like it can be translated as a mist or a cloud. And not that cloud which is on somebody's hard drive. Okay? It's not about that kind of cloud. It's the real cloud. So what it is it's cloud, very cloudy. They did not want to translate it this way because it kind of didn't make any sense, but in reality it did. It does. What the whole book is talking about is the world is like shepherding the wind and trying to take care of clouds. Have you ever were in like a thick cloud, like a mist, and sometimes kids try to, make a cloud ball? Okay? How long does it take?
Forever.
Till the wind blows and everything is gone. Okay? So, but who sends the wind? Who is in control? God. Okay? So while you live in this misty, cloudy life, where you can sometimes see through, sometimes I'm wondering, maybe Paul was thinking about the book of Ecclesiastes when he said, now we see kind of dimly. Okay? But then there will be a moment when all of those, the breaks would be, all of the things that does not let you see clearly will be gone, and we will see like face to face. So when you live your life, it's kind of going through the mist, going through clouds. Because some things do make sense, and some things don't. I'm sure you all, and we all, and especially those who live even closer to ocean, like, Los Osos, or Morro Bay, or Cayucas, or Cambria. When you go through the cloud, and you see two lights coming in, is this a car or two bikes? Okay? So it's kind of like something is coming, you do not see, but then when they come close enough, okay, it's a car. Or maybe it's two bikes. Or maybe it's one bike, and he has a long pole that he carries from Home Depot and has two lights on it. Whatever. So my point is, you kind of see through, but you do not. You kind of have information, but this is always not enough. Something escapes you. See, that's why theology is always fun. Because we have some paradigms, we have some patterns, we have some models, and we can see like, okay, that's how it looks like. And then you have one verse, and your paradigm doesn't work. Or you have a bunch of paradigms, and it looks great, and then you have something in life, and it's like, okay, how do you apply it now? Okay? So That's what it talks about. That there is a great wisdom into going through life, through those misty clouds of life, but knowing that there is the one who is in charge of those clouds, gives us hope, gives us joy. And therefore, whatever we do, as a result, we can eat, drink, and be merry. Okay? Now, with this in mind, right before we'll go to this text, we need to jump into one New Testament passage, because it is important to understand how it relates back to the whole theme and to this passage in particular. If we'll go into Luke, Gospel of Luke, chapter 12. Famous story. You know this parable. It is about parable, what I have on my margins, placed by the publishing company that produced this particular Bible, Crossway, says, the parable of the rich fool. Okay? Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide inheritance with me." And Jesus said, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them. So Jesus now tells them the parable. What's the parable? A land of a rich man produced plentifully, beginning with verse 16. And he thought to himself, "What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops." And he said, "I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry." But God said to him, "Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, those will be with you. Whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not riches toward God." So, does this phrase sound familiar? Eat, drink, be merry. What's the problem?
Don't overdo it.
Overdoing what?
Excess.
Excess?
Flattening.
Okay. What did you say?
Say what you said.
Just repeat it. What did you say? Huh?
For tomorrow we die.
Okay. Where's God in this sentence? See, almost all the passages that we read in Ecclesiastes is eat, drink, and be merry because it is a gift of God. Now he tells it to himself. My soul, I have so much. My soul, you can relax, eat, drink, and be merry. So he relies on whom? On himself, exactly. Okay? Not on God. Why, according to Ecclesiastes, we can go through the misty clouds and still eat, drink, and be merry? Because we know who's in charge. Okay? In this parable, who he believes is in charge? Himself. Okay? That's the problem. So, two lessons from this particular parable. When you read something in the Bible, try to see, and especially if it's parables, try to see what part of the Bible Jesus connects it to. Either from parables, Ecclesiastes, sometimes it's Deuteronomy, other things. It will give you a richer context for an understanding. Secondly, again, we can eat, drink, and be merry, but as long as we do understand who is in charge. Yes, Charlie?
Isn't it good for us though also to have some storage or have enough on hand that we can share with company and family?
Sure.
I mean, that requires some discipline to
Yes.
have that set aside
Yes.
or available.
Yes. Jesus didn't... I think that the point of the parallel is not to store and not to take care of the things that, first of all, you earned, you did it. That's your harvest. Okay? It's somewhat foolish, or let's be a little bit more politically correct, it's something not really wise. Okay? Not to take care of that. But again, who provided for the harvest. Especially here, in this context. You know, most of the farmers do believe that God is somewhat involved in their, toils and farming and so on and so forth. Because He provides rain, He provides sun, and so on and so forth. But even if you have like sprinklers, if you have like artificial lightning, or you can cover your crops from hail or something. Still, who is in charge? And God. We know it is God. Okay? So the problem of this guy in the Gospel of Luke is not that he stored, but it was, I have it. I have it. My soul, you can relax because I have it. Okay? So it's all I. Yes?
We understand, like in our pantries, in our wine stores, whatever, we know where it came from. And we thank God for that every time we involve the Lord, right?
We do.
Or we should.
Okay. I'm not questioning that. We do. You step outside and you see many more people who do not. It's just out of their worldview. We came up with a generation of people, or maybe even 2 generations by now, for whom, and it's not necessarily even their fault, they were taught this way, for whom God, creator of the universe, that person, not necessarily this old beardy guy, but the creator of the universe, even not in the horizon of their worldview. They really have when you begin to talk to them, it throws them off. It's such a curveball they cannot catch it. Yeah, it's like a parallel universe. So we have X number of citizens, so everybody lives within the perimeter of the United States of America. Okay? But we have X number of citizens who live in one universe and another one's just it's a parallel universe. They operate differently, their ethics is different, and their goals in life are different. And somehow we need to, live with each other. Now, going back to our text just for a second, kind of summarize it because we picked up all the themes basically that we have here. So beginning with verse 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. So again, if we understand that vanity is a cloud or mist, it's not bad. But it's elusive. You think you can rely on money. And then 2008 hits, and you have X number of suicides of those who lost their stock market value. People are so into that they do not see that even the loss of money it's bad. Hits you hard. But it's not the end. You can go through this. Okay? You can go through this tunnel and you will be restored if you rely on God. You will be restored on the other end. That's what we take as a main statement and very important for us as Lutherans. Righteous shall live by faith. And we always attribute it to Luther. Okay? And it's actually from Paul. But actually not. It's not from Paul. It's from book of Habakkuk. And Habakkuk writes that, guys, even if you repent right now, Babylon is coming. And you're going to go through exile. It's not going to be fun. But if you are right with God, if you have a right relationship with God, therefore you're righteous. It's not because you do lots of work. But if you have a right relationship with God, you will pass through by faith. That there will be a resurrection in the other end. Okay? So wealth and money is somewhat elusive. Does not mean that it's bad to be wealthy. It does not mean that all rich people are ugly infidels. Okay? No, some of them are, good, great Christians. Just right, in Fort Wayne, I've met with a classmate of mine who is a pastor in Naples. And his congregation is about like 60-40. 60% of people who live in Naples, somewhat rich guys, And the 40 people are what they call them snowbirds. They live up north like Wisconsin or Michigan, and this is like CEOs of Department of AT&T or some other stuff. And they are members of his congregation. The building was built basically, so they took a mortgage. So they changed the building, they took a mortgage, built another building, and third of that mortgage was paid in 3 years by 3 guys.
Oh,
They didn't like that.
Yeah, and so they came and said, we have a plan. It's like, okay. So those guys do not only have plans, but they want to back it up with their money. Great, awesome. I have no problem with that. He's blessed. Not because he has those 3 guys. I mean, and the whole congregation enjoys it. But the thing, so it's not about wealth. It's about how do you rely on wealth or not. And if you do, you try to like walk on the clouds. Have you ever flew over the clouds, on the plane? Have anybody thought that maybe I can, try to walk on the clouds?
looks like you could.
So that's what it talks about. Okay, when goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? So this is an advantage. There is no other advantages to see that if you produce lots of crops and many people can be fed, that's a joy. This is awesome. Okay? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer. Whatever he eats, little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. Just a practical thing. Sometimes we're kind of late with dinner, and I eat like so much. And it's not because by no means we are, in this rich category, but, the full stomach does not let you sleep. You just go from one side to another side, and then you have nightmares, and so on and so forth. So, now, there is a gravest evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, and those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he is father of a son, and he has nothing in his hand. This is really bad. Okay, you kept everything, and then stock market drops, and you have nothing to give to your son. This is really sad. This is really painful. Okay? So, and he came from his mother's womb. He came from his mother's womb. He shall go again naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hands. You know that many nations, actually, when they bury like a noble people, they put the, if it's like Vikings and those guys, they would put the helmet and the whole armor and the breastplate and the sword. And there are even nations that in their culture, they would even put the wife, even though she's still alive, and bury them together. And, so, but in reality, Bible tells us the real reality. You're going to be buried. You're not going to take anything. You're not going to care about anything. That's a different world. You pass through the door. There is no return. And this is also grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, we need to understand, okay, let me finish it. Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation, and sickness, and anger. Why? Because he what? He toils for the wind. He goes after something that cannot be caught, cannot be arranged. And think about this. The word wind in Hebrew is the word, who knows? Somebody knows? Ruach. It's a wind, but it's also breath. But it also is a word for spirit. Can we organize the movements of the Holy Spirit? No. He's in charge, and we are in submission. We can ask for help, and hopefully He will guide us. But by no means we can be in charge. We cannot chase Him or organize Him or toil after Him. Now verse 18. Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toils with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him, for this is his lot. Now, the phrase under the sun kind of requires a small explanation. Under the sun, some people think that under the sun means that while you live in the light. Okay? So there is a sun, and so there is day and there is night. Okay? So under the sun, you live in the light, and there is dark, and then there is like a sinful life or something like that. They try to see this kind of analogy. There is another thing is, under the sun means simply this life. Okay? While we live under the sun. Okay? And then we pass through the door of death, and everybody will. No exceptions. Even Jesus did. Okay? And that's what makes him real God for us. Because he did what we will do. So therefore, we can rely on that. So while we live our earthly lives, we live under the sun. And there is another very important thing. In the very beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay? And on the fourth day, he created sun, moon, and stars. But in the very end of the Bible, in Revelation 21, one chapter before the very end, so it's the last story, 2 chapters, what did John see? Shirley, you smile, I guess you know. What did he see?
I'm not remembering.
Okay, it's new heaven and new earth. Okay, new heaven presupposes new sun. So what Ecclesiastes also talks about is this creation as a whole one day will pass away, and some things will be adjusted and changed. And our life in the direct presence of the Lord will be different. Will be even more glorious. We can expect even more. But while this creation stands, for our short lives, and for life of our parents, and for life of our grandparents, and all ancestors, these rules do apply. So while we are here, we can encourage each other to eat, drink, and be merry. For it is that God has given us this life. Okay? So verse 19 and 20. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil. This is the gift of God. Okay? So going back to money and wealth. Yeah, you can enjoy it. But the more you have, the more responsibilities you have. Okay? So verse 20. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God has kept him occupied with joy in his heart. So it's not like, oh, that was bad and that was bad. No, we have joy and we can enjoy it now and with great expectations to see the future when we will see Jesus face to face. Okay? Questions or comments?